Hey, welcome to 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. My name is Matt, and with me, of course, is...
Dan,
Hey, Dan, how you doing, man?
doing well so far, so good. How are you, Matt?
Doing okay. Dan, the movie man. We are here because we are continuing our journey down the drum roll. 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. This is a multi-year task that we have taken upon ourselves to try to tackle, and I think we're doing okay so far. I mean, definitely let us know in comments and stuff what you think. But I mean, Dan, what's your overall thoughts of this journey so far? Where this is what, 5 episodes in?
I think so. And truthfully, we've had a lot of movies that I don't think would have watched otherwise. So far, it's kept me engaged. It's the first big name one that I've personally seen so far out of our journey. So I'm kind of excited to talk about one that I'm a little more familiar with and get back in that home field playing advantage. But so far, um, I guess we'll do an episode later on about what our picks were for movies that are ones you should see before you die versus ones you shouldn't. But really optimistic in particular about this episode. So.
Sure. And of course, if you can't tell by the colorful background and the man with the top hat behind us, today we are talking about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory from 1971. If you're following along with us in the 1001 Movies book, it is page number 521. Um, we're also going to talk about the new Wonka film because Dan and his wife just saw it. So we're going to get some thoughts on that, to talk a little, do like a mini review on that and kind of compare, you know, I guess what we thought was done well in the new Wonka, if anything, what we thought could have been done better, or if anything, that kind of thing. So Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I think we should start kind of with that and then maybe kind of merge into the 2013 Wonka. Um, so, as per usual, we read an excerpt
Oh,
from
2023 Wonka. Sorry.
that's, yeah, is that what I said?
I think you said 24.
Oh,
Or 2020. 2013. Sorry.
I said 13.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, 2023 Wonka.
Whoops.
Okay. So page 521, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Although most children's movies are saccharine, if not silly, Mel Stuart's adaptation of Ronald Dahl's popular children's novel is a happy exception. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is a juvenile black comedy replete with flash visuals, engaging songs, and an over the top performance by Gene Wilder as the title character, whose claim to fame is being the world's greatest candy maker. I think that pretty much sums up the plot, so I don't have to read the plot. And it's an excerpt from the book, Kill Two Birds with One Stone. Uh, Dan, I'm going to kick it off to you first for your initial thoughts on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Starting into Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I just want to point out that our star of our show, so to speak, is not Willy Wonka, but in fact Charlie. Charlie is the main character that we follow throughout the start of the story. In fact, I don't think we see Willy Wonka until about 30 minutes in. And we're put into this poverty stricken area where Charlie lives with his family, his mother, their parents, their grandparents. And again, as you can see in the visual, even his grandparents sharing a single bed while he's out in the town. We do see several visuals throughout the episode, or I'm sorry, the movie, where a lot of the school age children or children Charlie's age are inside of sweet shops where Charlie himself is forced to look on as he doesn't have the wealth to really go in and have those. And when he does, talk about that in a little bit. But overall, how we're introduced to the main story and how we come to meet Willy Wonka, we have a competition that we're going to go to Willy Wonka's factory. And in order to do that, you have to be one of these lucky contestants or one of these lucky children that find the golden ticket inside of a candy bar, a Wonka bar, in fact. and it really kicks off a lot of shenanigans. Um, and just before I kick it back over to Matt, I just want to say that the opening where we're introduced to Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka and his iconic, he comes out very slow. And honestly, it probably takes about a minute for him to get down the carpet outside the factory up to the gates where the children are. And then he leaves his cane behind him. He takes another step and he looks over and he realizes he's lost his cane. But then he rolls out of it and springs up. The crowd just goes wild. That's kind of how my feeling was reviewing this movie. And that feeling of excitement to see Gene Wilder on the screen portraying this character, Willy Wonka. Really great start off. But Matt, what were your thoughts, I guess, specifically on the beginning, the build up, and maybe the primary character here, Charlie?
Sure, sure, sure. Um, so I had just watched this not long ago in preparation for the new Wonka film, which we'll also be discussing. Um, and you know, I thought so. I was it was fresh. I was already fresh on my mind, but I rewatched it just so that way everything was even more fresh. Um, I think the visuals here are all really beautiful, all really good. The Candy Factory, um, like you said, Gene Wilder absolutely owns this movie. He from the minute he walks on screen, it becomes Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Like up until then, it could have been really any movie, but it's he takes ownership, and uh, the cast is all fantastic and believable. I thought a lot of it still the production design, like the sets and everything. I think all that really still holds up in a lot of ways. Um, the movie itself is a little dated, but that's not surprising considering it's like almost 50 years old, or maybe even over. I think it's over 50 years old. Um, but you know, initial thoughts. It's just a fun movie. It's a fun movie to watch. It's magical, it's whimsy, it's everything you kinda want it to be. It's also a little terrifying at times. It's a little dark, it's a little, you know, scary. The tunnel, I don't know if you remember the tunnel scene, but when they're in the tunnel and everything, like, kinda flashing, around them and, that was it was scary, and then there's, like, children, falling off and falling into the furnace, potentially maybe dying, like, it's a wild the '70s, man, what a wild time. That's my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think with the children, each one, other than Charlie, and even Charlie has his time where the vices shine through, especially with the fizzy soda drink where he drinks it even though they're not supposed to. Each of the children goes against Willy Wonka's wishes and either drinks from the chocolate river or they decide to hop up on the shrinking television thing and get turned into millions of tiny bits floating on top and then re-put together as a tiny child, more chewing gum that's not ready to be used by humans, where it's like a three-course meal or however they set that out. Um, but overall, I think one thing that stood out to me this time as an adult rather than a child watching this film was how Willy Wonka responded to all this. So I got a couple different vibes off of Gene Wilder's character this time or this watch. And one is like the complete apathy when the children start meeting their fates. I remember the mother towards the beginning part. Or she was yelling about something. He's like, "Oh, geez, stop! Please call for help or whatever." And he did that a couple times while the kids were, having things done to them, inflating into giant blueberry type people, or getting stuck in that tube like Augustus Gloop. So it was not only that piece, but when he was showing them around the factory, one thing that kind of stuck out to me too is that in this picture, not a really great representation of what I'm about to say, but he almost seemed like he could be bothered less by being where he was. He walks over, he taps on things, makes candy fall out. And at first, I think in my first initial walks of the movie, is like he was excited, he was showing the kids, but this time I didn't feel that at all. I felt like he felt almost like it was a chore being there. That he just was there because he kind of had to be. I don't know if you got that vibe or not. And then the last piece I want to put before we start talking about the Willy Wonka from Wonka is that I felt like this Willy Wonka was very scientific. It was all about machines and doodads and new inventions and the rise of technology and what he could do to compete with the gentleman that we see in the beginning of the movie that wants Charlie to steal the everlasting stoppers that we see. He's talked to everybody. Um, but very scientific mind rather than a magical um, type being. And then, of course, the scene where we go to the room where the chocolate river is with all the candy and the lollipop trees and giant gummy bears, where we're seeing those. And just that, when you're talking about the set, that's the first thing that pops into my mind when I think about the set. And I think that's specific or important too when we start to talk about Wonka, because it just made such an impression on me as a child, like what it would be to be in a world basically surrounded by candy and kind of what the setting of the chocolate factory is when you think about it. But I want to kick it back over to you real quick on your thoughts, just how you felt Willy Wonka interacted again with the children. I mean, did you get the kind of vibe that I did, where it's like more apathy more than excitement, or something you'd find maybe with somebody else showing children your entire world of chocolate and candy?
Right. I think the Willy Wonka in this version of the movie is definitely he's older. He's obviously aged. He's been around a time or two. And I think that's you kind of see you were talking about, lack of apathy and, just he's, people kids are essentially maybe or maybe not dying in his factory and he just doesn't really seem to care. I think it's in a way it's kind of sad to see that that's what he's become, especially when you compare it to what's meant to be a prequel in Wonka to see what he was. And but again, when this movie was made in '71, there was no one had any idea that there was going to be a prequel that featured a happier, younger Wonka. So we get this man who is ready to give up his life's dream. He's looking for someone to take over the factory. In the end of the movie, he gives Charlie the chocolate factory. Spoilers, and you know that's. But I think also in that moment we see like a glimmer of who he is. Like he's happy. He feels secure in his decision of who he's giving his factory to, and allowing the grandpa and the whole family to stay there. Um, did that answer your question? I don't. I don't know if it did or not.
No, I think it did. And I did want to ask you a question on that. So it is confirmed that Wonka is supposed to be a prequel to this version of Willy Wonka, or is
It
it?
is. No, that is confirmed. It is Timothy Chalamet is meant to be Gene Wilder. They're the same guy.
So, lady on the side panel here is letting me know that it's also confirmed to be of all iterations, including the Johnny Depp version of Willy Wonka as well, which is interesting because I don't think
But
we
see,
even.
I don't know because how does that work though? Because wasn't Charlie and the Chocolate Factory essentially a remake with it's retelling the same story as this movie?
I almost feel it's got to be kind of like a Halloween esque thing to it, where if you pick which movies you want to go on, like you could watch Wonka and then it could be Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or you could watch Wonka and then it's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So I guess it would
I
be
mean,
user's choice.
yeah, I mean, I love Tim Burton and I love Tim Burton movies, but I just have never been able to warm up to the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. I've never thought that it was that great of a movie. I never thought, I love Johnny Depp, but it's just that movie. It's weird. He's creepy. It's not what I think that this movie and then the new movie display for the character at all. Something totally different. It's in its own little world, at least in my view.
No, I'd agree with that. And I was talking to Kayla when we were watching this movie. There were parts out of Wonka that really to me almost reflected Gene Wilder. I wouldn't say with as much fire that Gene Wilder brought to the role, but one of the contrasts and why I really didn't know if this was part of that universe was the fact that it was more magically inclined than the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where we had a more scientific approach to candy making. I think he had like lightning in a bottle and tiers of different things. It was almost like a wizard or a magician's toolkit. And one thing that he did state was that growing up in Wonka, that he wanted to be a magician at first when he was living with his mother on the boat, and he had practiced all these tricks and things. And I think he took that showmanship with him um, to become the candy maker that he would eventually be. And when you talk about taking two movies side by side, it was a very different story. I mean, again, we're talking about his initial roots, finding a place, getting accepted into candy making, all this good stuff. But the one thing that kind of drew me in that would say, okay, I can see this being, younger Willy Wonka when we talk about, again, I'm only going to be talking about the Gene Wilder version, but just the room in the shop that they set up where they have the trees and the candy, and it was very reminiscent of the factory floor where they have the chocolate river and the candy, and a lot of the same items. Um, but overall, how about you, Matt? What are we looking at for a Wonka?
So Wonka, shifting gears, uh, I thought was fantastic. And not that I don't think Willy Wonka's fantastic, but Willy Wonka, I didn't grow up with Willy Wonka. I know some people in my own family that grew up with Willy Wonka that love this movie and swear by this movie, and it is their favorite movie of all time. I know at least one person, and I didn't have that experience. I didn't come across this movie until I was a little older, so I didn't have that same growing up with this movie. Um, it had already been out for many, many years by the time I was born. And then, it was just something that I could probably count on one hand how many times I've seen it. I mentioned that I had just watched it in preparation for Wonka, but before that, I've only maybe seen this movie maybe 4 times total. So I say all that to say Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, while being a great movie, is not one I'm going to go back to that often unless I have to. Um, Wonka from 2023, starring Timothy Chalamet, uh, is phenomenal, and, people were saying they didn't know it was a musical, they didn't advertise it as a musical. Well, so was Willy Wonka. Like, if you think about it, Willy Wonka features many musical numbers, like, maybe not as many as Wonka, but Willy Wonka has a handful of songs in it, where they just break out into singing. So, I didn't get people's gripe about that. I loved the soundtrack. I loved the songs. I was there for it all. I had told you right before we hit record, I downloaded the entire soundtrack and have listened to it numerous times since I've seen this. Um, Wonka was one of my favorite movies of the entire year. In fact, on my Letterboxd account, I will always find a way to bring that into play here. I think I ranked it as number 3 of 2023, uh, out of like 90 some movies that I watched the whole year. So uh, I loved it that much. It's going to be a day one purchase for me. Um, it's everything I wanted it to be and everything I didn't know that I wanted it to be at the same time. So what did you? I mean, you've kind of talked about, but what did you think?
I went in probably with a lot higher expectations than I should have, honestly, because
You're gonna tell me you hated it.
we live in a time where there's a lot of remakes, there's a lot of sequels, there's a lot of prequels being brought out. These movies that have existed. This one's what, over 50 years old at this point,
Yeah,
correct? Check my math. But
yeah.
overall, if it was going to be brought back after half a century, it had to be something magical. It had to capture some of that essence that made Willy Wonka such a great movie to begin with. Because to me, Willy Wonka has and will always be a nostalgic movie. I feel that Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is one of those movies where you set other movies up next against to and you judge the framework. Like they either will be with you for the rest of your life, or you'll be looking back and you'll be like, oh, I don't even care. So when I sit here and I tell you that Wonka did that for me, it's kind of it's really hard to say because there was a lot going on in this movie. I think Chalamet is growing on me as an actor. I'm not a diehard supporter like someone else on this channel with me or somebody else even in this room with me right now, but he did a phenomenal job. I'm not a big musical guy, but I did enjoy the numbers that they had in the show. I thought that the acting was great. I thought the supporting cast was great. Um, I liked that they took the story pretty much completely out of where the original was, but there was enough in it that paid tribute to the original, to me, the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that it definitely felt like spiritually they were entwined. So, and I know Kayla and I were talking originally about were these two movies related, and initially we thought that they were in two different universes, which I was cool with. Kayla still believes it. If you can see her or hear her on the side, but to me, it does make some degree of sense that they are together. And truthfully, I wouldn't mind watching like both, like one day closer around Christmas time. I know Kayla was talking about that before. Something sweet, right before Christmas, watching them both together as like a little movie marathon. And yeah, I loved it. The colors were great. The iconic outfit was still there. We still had the Oompa Loompa.
What
Um,
did you think of the Oompa Loompas? So we got the OG Oompa Loompas, and then we got the new Hugh Grant Oompa Loompa. What was your opinion of Hugh Grant?
I feel like Hugh Grant was actually a lot better in the role. I like that he had a voice outside the singing. He was able to converse with him, and he was intelligent, um, articulating like what had happened, like his story. Like he came in, he stole his cocoa beans, and then his people basically wouldn't let him come back unless he got it repaid. And he did that. I think that Willy Wonka did right by him, and I like that story of friendship built more so than almost like indentured servitude that we got the Oompa Loompas going in on the original. Because it's kind of like, oh, they were getting harassed and attacked by all these animals and things, and I brought them over, and all I had to give them was basically chocolate, like because they love chocolate. I don't know. I felt like we're definitely taking advantage there, but but again, for the time of watching the Wonka movie. I really had a great time. Our kids were in there; they had a great time, and honestly, it kicked my son off. We were playing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory the other day, a couple days ago, yesterday, one of the two, and he was way all over that too. Which to keep his attention for a movie, it wasn't that bad in length, like an hour and 39 minutes. Um, did a good job. So
Yeah, the original you're talking, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah, I can't remember how long it is, but it's not too terribly long.
Hour
Um,
and 50 some minutes, Kayla's telling me.
okay,
56.
yeah, okay, yeah. Well, yeah, no, I agree. I love that they gave the Oompa Loompas a background and a voice, like you said. It made more sense. Like I don't, an Oompa Loompa doesn't make sense to begin with, but if you're gonna have it, then it made sense, right? I thought Hugh Grant did fantastic. You were talking about the cast. The uh, we had the picture up a second ago of Wonka and Noodle. I thought Noodle was a fantastic supporting character. I loved the relationship and the connection that she had with Wonka. It was wholesome. It felt magical. You wanted them to be friends. You wanted him to help her and stand. You wanted her to help him, and just be. uh, you know, help each other out of that place that they were in. And was it predictable? Was the ending predictable at times, especially when it came to that character Noodle with her mother and everything? Yeah, I called it as soon as they mentioned it in the movie. But that's what I wanted. If they hadn't given me that, then I would have been disappointed, right? So I just think, like I mentioned, Willy Wonka is something that I think is great. I mean, of course, if I'm gonna rank these, I'm gonna put Willy Wonka first, only because without it, we don't get Wonka. But I think Wonka is right up there, side by side with it. It's a close second. It's a first and a half. It's one and a half. It's leaps and bounds above Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Tim Burton movie, I think. And I stack the whole thing. I stack the soundtrack. I'll even give you this. I think the soundtrack of Wonka 2023 is better than the soundtrack of Willy Wonka 1971. But as far as everything else, I stack them right next to each other. The cast, the visuals, the movies themselves, I think they're just fun times and just a magical experience and fun, like you said, for the whole family. This is something you can take your kids to or sit down on the couch and watch and not have to worry about what's in it or what's going to pop up. And they're probably going to enjoy what they see on the screen.
Yep, and I guess now the part of our show where we talk about whether or not this is a movie that we'd watch before we die, and I guess we're gonna have a little bonus in here too, because we've also been talking about Wonka. So, for those of you that fast forwarded, how we felt. Hopefully, you didn't do that about both films and kind of some of the comparisons of how they stack up against each other. If we were to do a shot by shot comparison, we'd be here all day. But for me, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, again, the 1971 original. Would I be interested in, or is this a movie you should see before you die? 100%. 100%. And with Wonka starring Timothy Chalamet.
Chalamet.
Chalamet, I like to call him Shamalot. But Chalamet 2023. Would I want to watch this movie before I die? Guys, I think we got to update the book. We got to add this one in. We've had one that we wanted to take out. Let's put this one in there. It's a good one. It's a good one. How about you, Matt?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would take again. We haven't our Blue Velvet episode as of this recording hasn't gone live yet, so no one has told me why Blue Velvet is a movie they must see before they die. But I would take Blue Velvet out without question and replace it with Wonka. I would do it every day of the week, twice on Sunday. So uh, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, original 1971, absolutely is a movie you must see before you die. And then you can't. It's like a companion. It's like the Fox and the Hound. You can't have the fox without the hound. It's like Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket. You can't have one without the other. Shrek and Donkey, Batman and Robin, so on and so forth. I think you can't have Willy Wonka now without Wonka. So yes, it is a movie you also must see before you die, and you should probably watch them together because they're just great. Watch Wonka first, then watch Willy Wonka, or heck, watch them in the order they came out. Watch Willy Wonka and then watch Wonka. You might you might like it better that way. Who knows?
No, I want to say Hollywood. I guess if we could follow this rubric every time we did a sequel, we'd be in good shape, or a prequel, actually. Um, And with that note, just some interesting news Matt brought to us today. I wanted to bring up that Jurassic Park 4 or Jurassic World 4 is being tossed
Mm,
around. I just wanted to put this in a little snippet for folks who are watching. Um, why? just just why? I don't know. Um, but anyways, back to
yeah,
this.
the
Go ahead,
reboot,
Matt.
the reboot,
World.
sequel, requel world that we live in is, occasionally you get a lot of times you get a bad, you know, uh, final result from it, and you ask yourself, like you just said, why? As soon as we saw the news on the Jurassic World 4 being written, um, by original Jurassic Park writer, which is okay, that's cool, but why? Haven't we already said everything we need to already say with those characters? And if we give us new characters, still, why? Wait 5, 10 more years and then give me a remake of no, I don't want a remake of anything. I was gonna say give me a remake of Jurassic Park, but no, because that's a perfect movie. So, like, I don't know what you do. I guess you just keep doing what you're doing. You just keep adding on to the legacy and just keep on furthering and pushing it into the ground because, who knows? Maybe I might be eating my words in a year or two whenever this thing is released. I'll be like, that Jurassic World Ford put them back on the map. Like, who knows? I would love that if that happened, but highly unlikely, right? Um, this Wonka 2023 is for sure how you do that. And uh, I at this point I'm rambling. I don't know what. um,
Well, we're going to be going further into our movie journey here. Again, this is the fourth or fifth movie that we watched for this series. Really excited to bring it to you. I know for you guys, it feels like we've been at it for over a month, I guess, at this point, whereas we've been, what,
knocked all this out in like 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah,
So, hope,
something like that.
yeah,
Two and a half
hopefully we'll be
weeks.
able to bring you some more content. And if you guys are watching, please engage us. We would love to have some more interactions with you folks, some thoughts, opinions. Even if we didn't say anything that you were thinking, or maybe we were completely off base in your mind, let us know. We always love the constructive feedback and criticism. And again, we're just going at this because we love movies, and we're by the end of this, I feel like we're going to be actual critics of movies.
Cinephiles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna be in it. Like we watch 1,000 movies and we talk about why they're good or they're bad or whatever. And we owe it to these folks. And again, I know Matt said at the top of the episode, but Stephen J. Snyder and Ian Hayden Smith, thank you so much for what you brought for us. And then also the creators of Wonka, the movies we talked about that today, and Willy Wonka. You guys definitely put something in front of us that it stood the test of time so far. That's a great shot, and hopefully will stand the test for many more generations. I mean, we've got a new generation that went with us to the movie theater that's already in love with the old
And
and the
that's
new.
and that's what I think is so great about potential remakes and reboots because, when they work great. And you can introduce a new audience. So now your kids, Dan, and everyone else, the world's kids that may not have ever watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory are now introduced to these characters and love them and appreciate them in the same way that the other generation did because they watched Wonka and just like you said with your kids, then went back and watched the original Willy Wonka. So, that's the beauty of it. Like same thing with the Jurassic movies we were just talking about. Jurassic World introduced a whole new generation to Jurassic Park, a series that had pretty much died out in the 90s or early 2000s. And now it's huge again because of the reboot remake. Some of those Jurassic World movies were good. That's the beauty of what a remake and a reboot can do. So I'm not 100% against them, but when they work really well for that reason to introduce new audiences to new generations to the old generation and have them kind of collide. And so then one day if I'm talking with someone who's much younger than I am, uh you know significant, like one day if I'm talking to one of your kids, Dan, and be like, oh yeah, I remember and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, blah blah, and they'll be able to say, yeah, I remember it because they know, because of the Wonka movie, that then introduced them to the Willy Wonka movie. So that's that's more rambling for you.
No, you're good. But now it's typically the part of the episode where we go to a random number generator, it tells us a page, and we pick where we're going to go. So we've already consulted the mighty randomizer, and it has put us on page 671, of which we had two options. And we went with the second. Matt doesn't even know about what the
I didn't
first
even
one.
know. Was there another option?
Yeah, we went with a random generator, and it decided to pick number two instead of number one. The first choice, just to give you a hint of what you missed out on, would have been the Evil Dead The original Evil Dead.
We skipped out on Evil Dead for the one that we're going with?
The randomizer skipped out on Evil Dead.
Okay, okay.
And we have ended up landing on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So our next episode, we'll be talking about one that I've heard a lot about, another one that I have not personally seen.
You haven't seen it? Oh, boy.
I have not. And that page number, just so you folks following along with us will know, if you haven't already picked up your copy, pick up a copy if you'd like to go in this club with us. 671 is the page number, my folks.
Yeah. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is our next movie. Cannot wait to talk about that with you, Dan. That's another one of those that you hear a lot about, and then you don't really get it until you watch it, and then you're like, okay, I now understand. Hopefully, that's what you think.
Will it live up to the hype? Is it truly one of the movies that's 1,001 movies to see before you die? We agree that there's one out there that hasn't been. Are we going to be adding to the list? Let's find out on our next episode.
I can't wait till we disagree. Like I'm looking forward to where I say it is and you say it's not, because I think that's what's more likely to happen versus me saying it's not and you saying it is. But yeah, until next time, folks, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to comment, let us know your thoughts. Which one do you prefer, Willy Wonka or Wonka? Again, let us know. We're just picking from this book randomly. As you see, every week we're doing a random generator, picking the number. So if there's something, if you are following along with us and you know that there's a movie in this book you want us to discuss, let us know. Comment. Maybe we'll pull that one to the front of the list and talk about it. So, but we can take a break from the randomizer for a week, and that would be cool. So give us your feedback, give us your thoughts. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment. And until then, we will see you next week, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.
Keep crunching that popcorn, guys.